running away from the responsibilities that leadership delivers.
Gareth Davies.
Much, Llywydd, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the hard work of the Culture, Communications, Welsh Language, Sport and International Relations Committee in producing our section of this report, along with the essential work of the clerks and committee staff, and indeed the ones of the cross-committees who all contributed to the UK-EU implementation review of the TCA. It provides a valuable overview of how the Trade and Cooperation Agreement continues to shape Wales's cultural and international landscape. But as Conservatives and supporters of Brexit, we have a responsibility to make sure this conversation is rooted in opportunity and optimism, not nostalgia for EU membership. It's clear from the evidence we've seen that many organisations who gave evidence still see re-entry to the single market, the customs union, or even freedom of movement as solutions to the challenges they face. I respect those views, but I have to say plainly that that debate on those is over. The people of the United Kingdom, and most importantly of Wales, voted to leave the EU, and our task should be to make Brexit work for Wales, not to rerun the arguments of 2016 or drift towards re-entry by stealth. There are strong arguments for re-evaluating elements of the single market, but rejoining the customs union would be incredibly foolish, given it was always the most harmful aspect of our membership, particularly as we sell more outside of the European Union than to the EU. And this was the case when we were still a member of the EU and something we were penalised for. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement gives the UK full control over its trade, its borders and its laws. It also allows us to tailor solutions where they are needed, which is sensible. And that is exactly how we should approach issues like the touring arts, creative mobility and youth exchange, through practical targeted agreements, not by signing away sovereignty or regulatory control. I welcome the UK government's common understanding with the EU earlier this year, which recognised the value of cultural exchange and sets the stage for constructive talks on youth mobility and travel for artists. These are the kinds of incremental steps that we will deliver results without compromising the freedoms that Brexit secured. However, I must say that the Welsh Government's approach has too often lacked focus. Instead of calling for even broader EU strategies or hinting at rejoining multiple EU programmes, ministers should be concentrating on how to use these powers that they already have. Programmes like Tithe, designed and delivered here in Wales, show that international exchange doesn't depend on Brussels. They demonstrate that we can design something more flexible, more inclusive and better suited to Welsh needs. And while that is right, that we can maintain close working relationships with European partners, I do find it disappointing that so much of the Welsh Government's rhetoric still suggests that the only route to success lies through EU structures. Where are the new partnerships with Canada, Japan or Australia? Where is the same energy for strengthening our global links through the UK's new trade deals? I'm also concerned that Labour members of the Senedd are calling for Britain's re-entry into the European Union, and two members in question have set up a cross-party group on this subject. So I'd like the Welsh Government to clarify whether this is the official position of the Welsh Labour Party to rejoin the European Union, and I'd be much grateful can make that clear in her response to this debate. On data protection and adequacy too, I'd like to stress the importance of balance. Businesses need certainty when trading with the EU, but we should also celebrate the UK's ability to develop a more innovation-friendly data regime that supports growth and not stifle it. So, Llywydd, while this report raises legitimate issues, particularly around communication between governments and the cultural impacts of the TCA, we must not lose sight of the bigger picture. Brexit has given us the ability to do things differently and better if we have the confidence to use that freedom. And those in favour of rejoining the EU cite Brexit as our reason for our economic woes. But I'd like to firstly point out that the day that Brexit took place, or took effect on the 31st of January 2020, was the day that the first 2 cases of COVID were diagnosed in the UK, leading to the worst peacetime economic disaster in our history, caused by the need to pay people to stay at home for 2 years. It's worth noting that we've outgrown the Eurozone since the referendum was held in 2016. So rather than continuously framing the TCA as a list of those losses, we should be looking for gains, not more creative export opportunities, stronger links with the Commonwealth and Anglosphere markets, and new forms of cultural diplomacy that reflect Wales's place in a truly global Britain. The cultural sector can still benefit from Brexit, but it requires a different mindset, one that focuses on the potential opportunities that lay outside of the Union, rather than considering post-Brexit Britain as damage control. So in short, and to close, let's make Brexit work for the arts, for our young people and for the Welsh economy by being ambitious and outward-looking, and the Welsh Government must play its part in this rather than harking back to the past.
Ysgrifennydd y Cabinet.
The Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Energy and Planning to contribute to the debate, Rebecca Evans.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all MS colleagues and also stakeholders who